So Gurdjieff was saying this, this is a fourth way term, this transformation of suffering. And he was saying that everybody suffers. Everybody suffers. Is a state of, is the condition of human being to have suffering. But Gurdjieff was saying that, however, everybody is suffering in vain. They don't grow from it. In being asleep, it's more like suffering and not have any profit. And he was saying that for us on the path, suffering is like in those video games, like there's a lot of fuel and energy. However, we have resistance to it, have lots of resistance to it, and embroidery. Actually, I like this term and I'll come back to it. So Gurdjieff was saying that for us on the path, we train ourselves, we know that, hey, there's a big opportunity and there's a choice point here. I suffer like everyone else in vain with embroidery, or they said the moment you suffer, remember yourself. And then you are doing this like transmutation. Yeah. But this is hard. Also, Gurdjieff was saying that there are two types of suffering. There is real suffering, unavoidable suffering, of which Buddha was talking about, like there's old age, pain, sickness, death, and loss, and everybody we love is going to die. So that is, so that's a real suffering. War, the refugees, the bombs, the this, the that, some emotion, yeah? That's the real suffering. A friend dies, or a friend is sick, or my child is sick. That's some real suffering. But Gurdjieff was saying that on top of that, and the more suffering is the unnecessary, self-created, unnecessary suffering, which is the created through identification, through low state of consciousness, for juicing it, embroidery. So the way how Peter describes, he somehow got to this place where it's kind of clean now. There is this like, I feel her suffering, I feel it in me. I wake up, I don't resist it. I want to help her, but so it kind of passes through. Yeah. But so that's, Gurdjieff would say that the most difficult thing to do, to let go, is our unnecessary self-created suffering. Also one can have some real suffering and on top unnecessary suffering. So if one suffers cleanly, it can last like 2 minutes or 5 minutes. Yeah. Or if one suffers with embroidery, then it can take forever. Yeah. So I'll give you an example, like unnecessary suffering will be like, okay, she's suffering. Now, instead of feeling it, I have lots of thoughts about it. So one obstacle to transformation of suffering is that I'm not aware actually of my emotion. And as Eckhart Tolle will say, the pain body will ooze into the head, into the intellectual center. So from the instinctive emotion center, energy goes into the intellectual center. And there is these thoughts. What does it mean about me? Oh, I'm a bad father. I need to do something. Something, So that is extra. And we can't transform this one. Yeah. That can just be dropped. But underneath there is some, like, oh, I feel her. It's like, So
may I add something, Mihai?
What we do in KI, we disentangle some of this necessary suffering first, loosen it up, and then we get to the actual feeling of it. And then, in KI is this, I want to feel this now. I don't need to get rid of this in KI. It almost brings it more precise, actually, the actual resistance and everything like that. Yeah.
What I was going to say is that almost always the unnecessary suffering layer, if there's the real suffering, let's call it, or pure suffering, and then the layer on top of that is usually negative emotions of some kind. And that's why the fourth way says, you can't transform your suffering until you can transform negative emotions about the suffering. So first we have to, or you could say, transcend the negativity, all the negative emotions about my suffering and about me, this sense of me who is suffering. All of that has to be seen through or dissolved or transcended in order to be able to actually access the material that's in the real suffering. And then that's a whole nother level of transmutation. Because if you think about it, when we transform the real suffering of being a human being, and my example with my daughter is a small example in this regard, but when we transform negative emotions, we are transforming our psychological body, our psychological sense of I. But when we transform real suffering, we are literally transcending our whole sense of identity as a human being, as a body and a mind. And this is the hidden magic, really, of suffering. It contains this possibility, if we can manage not to get sucked into it, if we can instead find a way to use it, the word is transform or transmute it.
Yeah,